For 25 years, American foreign policy followed a predictable, grinding rhythm. It relied on large-scale troop deployments, territory occupation, and frequent pauses in hostilities to coax adversaries to the negotiating table. The exit from Afghanistan served as the endpoint for this nation-building approach. The United States left behind billions in infrastructure and lost 13 service members in a single day, while hostile forces instantly reclaimed the territory. This legacy shaped the approach to Iran, a regime that spent 47 years building a formidable military network. Tehran specialized in projecting power through proxy militias designed to bleed traditional armies dry through a war of attrition. Confronting such an entrenched adversary usually left planners with two options: a massive ground invasion or a long-term diplomatic stalemate. Standard playbooks were widely expected to fail.
The administration moved away from these norms by projecting a public image of deliberate volatility. Aggressive rhetoric and sharp departures from protocol created an atmosphere of uncertainty that left observers unsure of the next move. This behavior aligns with the madman theory, a strategy where a leader projects irrationality to force an opponent into a more cautious or submissive position. This calculated projection of instability provided the foundation for a military and diplomatic campaign designed to achieve its goals within a compressed 6-week window. Rather than the expected ground campaign, the U.S. launched an overwhelming aerial operation. It relied on thousands of sorties launched from outside the theater, keeping 0 American boots on the ground in active combat. Over 6 weeks, this campaign systematically degraded Iran's physical standing. Strikes targeted barracks, arsenals, air defenses, and the primary ships of the Iranian Navy. The physical costs of this operation reflect a sharp break from previous Middle Eastern interventions. This chart shows an estimated expenditure of $50 to $60 billion and 13 tragic casualties, a fraction of the human and financial toll taken by previous long-term occupations. By keeping the threat of targeting civil and electrical infrastructure active, the administration forced the regime to consider the total paralysis of its internal communications and power. This reliance on technological advantage allowed the U.S. to degrade the regime's military standing while avoiding the high costs of a war of attrition. This strategy mirrors a psychological tactic used during the 1973 Yom Kippur War. At the time, Richard Nixon and Henry Kissinger coordinated their efforts to make the president appear dangerously unpredictable to foreign negotiators. In this modern iteration, the president ignored calls for a ceasefire and continuously increased the intensity of the bombing, signaling that he was unconcerned with traditional diplomatic de-escalation. Simultaneously, JD Vance took the position of emergency diplomat. While the bombing continued, he opened back-channel communications to offer the Iranian leadership an implicit path toward survival. The pressure of sustained aerial strikes, combined with this narrow diplomatic off-ramp, eventually pushed the Iranian leadership to the negotiating table in Islamabad. This stands in contrast to the Paris peace talks, where the U.S. spent a year negotiating while service members continued to suffer high casualties on the ground. By combining devastating force with a carefully timed diplomatic opening, the administration stripped the adversary of their ability to stall, eventually forcing them to sue for peace. The impact of the campaign was felt immediately on the ground. A severely weakened Iran was forced to reduce the funding it provides to its proxy networks, leaving groups like Hamas and the Houthis without their primary source of support. The level of physical damage has left the regime in a state of survival. In Islamabad, negotiators are now facing demands that would have been unthinkable before the strikes, including the potential handover of enriched uranium. This shift has accelerated a regional realignment. Israel, the Gulf states, and moderate Sunni nations are now coordinating their security efforts against a common enemy whose power has been significantly reduced. Removing the primary regional threat has allowed for the formation of diplomatic alliances that previous policies were unable to achieve. The results of this 6-week campaign stand against a 25-year history of military quagmires and costly retreats. It demonstrates that public rhetoric, even when criticized as erratic, can be used as a deliberate tool of statecraft to achieve specific strategic objectives.
By neutralizing the military capabilities of an ideological adversary, this strategy functioned as a defense of Judeo-Christian civilization against the threat of Islamofascism. The campaign suggests a new direction for American foreign policy, using asymmetric force and psychological pressure to neutralize threats without committing the nation to endless ground wars.